welcome to the Clubroom Show. I'm joined today by Philip Doyle, Olympic bronze medalist, just after coming back from Paris. And Philip, thanks for joining me. Great time in Paris. Talk us through that moment that you had. I know in rowing, you don't really know if you've won the medal until somebody actually says you've got it. But going in there, did you think that bronze was possible, or maybe even higher, maybe a silver, possibly?
Yeah, no, we always kind of knew. Myself and Dara over the last 16 months have had seven international competitions, and from those seven competitions we brought home 6 medals. So there's only one where we were at fourth by 0.4 or 0.5 of a second against the Dutch guys who won the silver at the Olympics there. So I always knew going into it, and when we finished the heat at the first day of the competition, and we won it was quite a comfortable race, to be honest. I turned around to him and I was like, we're bringing a medal home from this. It just depends on what colour it is. So the night before, I have a journal that I keep, and I used to write in a lot, but I've sort of stepped away from a bit now because you can write.
How long have you kept the journal?
From about 2 years before the Tokyo Olympics. So I used to write in it all the time and every day, and now I just sort of update it every week or so just to keep going. But during the Olympics, I sort of used it as a way to write down the thoughts.
And talk us through the process. So you arrive in Paris, what's the first thing you do? What's the process like for those that haven't been to the Olympics, as many of us? What's the process? You arrive in Paris, what's the first thing you do? And then from there, that sort of week leading up to it.
Yeah, well, for the first question, I suppose still, I wrote in the journal the night before, there's going to be a sprint finish for the Dutch, and
So you predicted it?
Well, I wrote sort of silver/bronze,
Right.
so that was silver/gold and a question mark and underlined it, and then the Romanians were in our race and they'd come fourth. They were coming fourth in the semi final, and then they came through the Serbians when the Serbians stopped in the last 100 meters. So to my mind, I was like, oh, they're not on form, so
Right.
they'll fade back during the race, and it'll be us left out at the front. But of course, they held on and managed to have the race of their lives and take the gold. So we were sprinting with the Dutch for silver and bronze.
Is there anything you would have changed looking back, or would you have done the exact same thing again? Do you think you did everything possible for the best outcome?
Yeah, well, with rowing, it's the only sport where you're racing facing backwards, so it's hard to see when someone's ahead. So you're sort of making assumptions that they're going to fade, like their pace that they've gone out at is not sustainable. So you're thinking you're going to eventually come through. But fair play, the Romanians, they held their pace the whole way down. So there's nothing you can do. You can't tackle them. You can't trip them up. You can't, you can't try and do anything.
They have a boat, you have a boat.
Yeah, you just have to stick in your lane and hope that your best is better than their best.
Obviously, there was reports of like food shortages and stuff that didn't affect you in terms of what you could get fuel wise.
Yeah, no, we weren't staying in the Olympic Village, so we stayed in a hotel outside because we're in a satellite area. So a lot of the venues were too far from the Olympic Village, and with Paris traffic, so we decided.
Was traffic an issue? Was it getting to and from?
Well, like I said, we weren't in the village, so we had nothing to do with it. We removed ourselves from that situation, kept ourselves separate in a hotel. We had great food, we had isolation, we had a team room where we had a coffee station and a slushy station and food and snacks. And, yeah, because the big thing for rowing as well is keeping your core temperature down. Okay. So with the heat, so you bring your core temperature down with slushy. So it was very important for racing with the ice vests and slushies to sort of bring the core temperature down so that you can improve your performance. Because you want your muscles warm but your core cold.
Yep.
And that's how you get your best performance.
And looking forward, obviously next Olympics is going to be in LA. Do you see yourself competing in them Olympics, or do you think this is it, or do you think there's more to come?
Unsure. To be honest, rowing's a miserable lifestyle. I've said it so many times. You must move to Cork. You must be perform in the high performance team, and that's complete. Your life is essentially dictated by somebody else. You get very little freedom of movement, very little independent thought. So that's a big factor in going forward. And like we were chatting the way over, I'll be 35 coming into the next Olympics. Yeah. Which isn't a great age, it isn't a mad age for a rower.
No.
The Sinkovich brothers who won the pair, one of them turned 36 on the day of the final, and the other one is 34. So,
you're not past it yet.
Because of the endurance element of it, that increases the longevity in the sport a little bit. Steve Redgrave over 5 Olympics. There was another guy, Alaraja, from the Estonian men's quad. That was his 5th Olympics as well. So there was 3 or 4 5-time Olympians in rowing at the Paris Games. Now, your performance does probably become a bit harder as you get towards 40, but 36 is still an age where you could definitely perform. But like I said, the lifestyle and the things would need to massively change over the next few years to make that decision possible.
Do you see yourself staying in the sport in another role, like as a coach or in another format?
No, I don't think I will be a very good coach.
No.
I'm quite an
Very patient person.
I know I'm an impatient person, and I think I have very high expectations. Yeah, so I could work with young kids. I feel like I can have a lot of patience for young kids, but when I get to that sort of teenager adult stage,
They should know better.
yeah, I expect them to have a certain amount of independent thought. So I would find that very frustrating. So,
is there any other sports you think, if I wasn't a rower, what sport would you be involved in? What sport would you think? What would you have done?
well, I always had a dream of being on the Irish international hockey team.
Okay.
When I was younger, and I played under 16s and I played under 18s Ulster, and I played a lot of young age group stuff for the hockey. And I was meeting up with some of the guys yesterday who were in Paris there with the men's team, and in Tokyo as well, the women's team. I would have known a lot of them, Deirdre Duke and the likes. So I always had that connection to hockey, and it was on the pathway to sort of try and make that senior international team. Shane O'Donoghue, who's the main flicker and one of the big players in the men's team at the moment, and I sort of come up through the young international ranks together. We met in Dublin. We were chatting about it the other day, how times have changed, and we're both in the homecoming from the Olympics, but for two different sports, however many years later. So I'd say if I'd kept going, probably hockey would have been my
Hockey
other,
would have been your go-to sport.
Yeah.
And lastly, do you think there'll be a lot of changes? Obviously, boxing's going to be obviously not included in LA. Do you think there's a lot more changes? The Olympics will happen.
Oh, there's so many. Rowing is a 2,000 meter sport, and they're dropping it down to 1,500 meters. So they had a 2K course at one stage, and then they built a bridge which cut it off into a 1,500 meter course. So we're going to have to change that. If I do come back, it's going to be a very more higher intensity type 2 fibre recruitment type sport, so less of the endurance and more of the sprint side of things. It's going to be a shorter race by about a minute and a half, which really does lend itself more to the sort of bigger, more muscly athletes who have more anaerobic capacity rather than the aerobic athletes.
So it'll favour them a lot more.
It'll favour them a lot more, and for myself and Dara, we're much more aerobic, so we come through in the second half of the race a lot more. So we would have to change the entire training style, maybe put on a few extra kilograms of muscle and build that side of the body up a bit more. Tag football's coming in, lacrosse is coming in. There's a softball, baseball. There's two more sports. Boxing's out, weightlifting's out. There's another lightweight rowing is gone, so the two guys who won the gold in the lightweight double will have to come and duke it out with myself and Dara. So there actually there's so many changes because they're trying to make, and I think beach sprints is coming in for rowing as well, which is something I've never been involved in. But you sprint down to the boat, you go 250 meters out, round a buoy, and 250 meters back, and then you sprint to touch a buzzer. So they're trying to make it more crowd friendly, because obviously if we start 2,000 meters away, and then the crowd are all at the finish line, they're kind of watching us on a screen for the first 3 or 4 minutes. Not very spectator friendly. Unless you're a rowing fan, then you would maybe find that interesting. But I know a lot of people who went over who haven't watched me row before, friends, cousins, etc. They're like, sure, we couldn't see you for the first 3 minutes. So I'm like, well, yeah, I know, but could you just see the screen? And they were kind of like, well, no, the screen was at a weird angle and we were too far back, so we were just listening. And I was like, well, that would be a bit, uninteresting if you weren't a massive rowing fan. So they're trying to change a lot of the sports just to bring, because the Olympics is commercial.
Of course.
The Olympics isn't it's about the athletes a little bit. Now after the Olympics, it's about the athletes celebrating the success. You don't have the success, you're maybe not celebrated that much, but the Olympics is about dinero. That's all it's about. Money, money, money. It's a commercial enterprise, and they have to make their bucks on whatever. So Samsung, Coca-Cola, the big money sponsors. When you're on the podium, they come and hand you a Samsung phone and they say, oh, will someone take a selfie while you're on the podium? That's not so we have a lovely memory. That's so the Samsung phone is in pictures.
Yeah, of course.
Right, so it's all about that. You have to have Coca-Cola bottle. You have to have this. You can only drink. There's Powerade available everywhere. It's commercial. So they need to sell tickets, they need to sell TV rights, they need to, if a city's spending, Tokyo spent nearly 20 billion hosting the Olympics. Paris now spent a lot on infrastructure and things, but they didn't build too many stadiums. So that was a beautiful part of Paris, because Paris only built a diving pool. Realistically, all the other infrastructure was there. They reused the Palace Gardens, they reused this, they reused the so they built kind of infrastructure on top which was removable. So you're in iconic landmarks of Paris. The beach volleyball was under the Eiffel Tower. Like, it was, they didn't build an arena. They just built seating around an area within the city, and then that can all be removed.
They were already well equipped to
so their outlay for the Olympics was probably less, but I think still the financial payout for the Olympics was huge. So they need to recoup that in some way, and they do that through their sponsors, and then the sponsors want their pound of flesh.
Of course.
So it's a corporation thing, realistically.
But
with
a lot
the
of sports
Olympics.
events like that, the
Yeah.
World Cup, you know.
So
very
they need to make their money back. So
Yeah.
that's why they're trying to bring in sports that generate more TV interest, crowd interest. It needs to be
the
more
range of
watchable.
sports, the
And
entertainment.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're getting rid of a lot of the old word, like the original Olympic sports, to bring in crowd favourites.
Yeah.
Over time, skateboard,
Audience figures.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, audience figures. That's what they're looking for.
Okay, so talk us about the Rowan partnership. Obviously, there's two using the boat. It's a team. Rowan's a team sport. Tell us about how that developed, how that started.
Yeah, so myself and Dara sort of came together. He was our spare for Tokyo, so I went to Tokyo with another guy. Had a try, and I was working in the hospital, in the Ulster Hospital at the end of during COVID. Came back in when the first games was postponed, and the three of us then, Dara had stepped into my seat. So we had qualified the boat. When you qualify a rowing boat, it's only the boat qualified. It's not you as a person.
Yeah.
So Dara and Ronan had then come together and won a bronze medal at the European Championships. Now it was a COVID European, so it wasn't maybe the same number of entries, but they still won a bronze medal at a senior international field. So I was sitting at home watching the race, in between work shifts, thinking, God, my seat is in jeopardy here. I need to come back in hard and win it back. So we came back in, the three of us duked it out for 3 or 4 months, and then eventually myself and Ronan came out on top. The original pairing, we won a world championship medal and qualified the boat in 2019, and then we were heading off to Tokyo. But Dara was our spare, so he was with us for that whole cycle in 2021. Then Dara headed off to finish his degree in Yale. He studied in Yale economics and business, so he went back and then started working for a startup in New York. And then after Tokyo, I went to work in Altna Galvin for years.
Right, okay.
I did my foundation 2 years as a doctor up there,
Yep.
and then came back into the system, kind of thinking, what is there? You know,
Yep.
who's around?
Who's around?
Dara was in New York. Ronan was taking some time away from the sport, so I was kind of on my own with these young under 23.
Was there anybody else that could have possibly been at that stage? It was always going to be him.
Well, no, he wasn't even on the scene. He
Okay.
wasn't even coming back at that stage. He was got this new job in New York. His girlfriend's in New York, and they were kind of set up there. And there was a few young guys, and I tried to make a few partnerships with them, which were going well, but there just wasn't the physical and the mental maturity in the boat that Dara then eventually brought. So I was training in a single on my own from October through to about April that year.
Still not knowing.
Still not knowing what I was thinking, maybe I'm going to try and go to the Olympics in a single boat, or go to the Olympics in a 4 or a quad, or what
Would
was
that
going to
have
happen.
been a lot of a harder thing to do?
Just would have been a different experience,
Yeah.
much different. It's obviously a different boat class, so everything would change. But then Dara, we managed to get him back from
Right.
New York in April, and our first competition was at the end of April, and we came second. But it was only a small international regatta. There wasn't too many there. But we did get to race the Dutch and the Italians and the Belgians and a few of the other countries that we would eventually race later on, and we came second in that race, which was, for us, after 4 weeks together, was very good.
Yeah.
So we came together quickly. Then we went to the Europeans and came fourth, and then from there on we won a medal at every regatta.
And that was from then on. It was
From then on, but yeah, until he came back from New York, I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to end up in a different boat,
Yeah.
or who's around? So I was weighing up my options, and I scull, so I have 2 oars each,
Right.
whereas there's a sweep version of rowing where you have 1 each.
Yep.
So the
Yep.
smallest boat you can be in is a 2.
Yes.
And I was sort of saying to the coach, here, if there's a chance here, I'm going to be putting my hand up and saying I want the trial for the sweep team,
Yep, of course.
as well.
Yep.
So he was like, look, we'll wait and see
Wait
what
and see what
happens for the rest of the season. Just keep training hard, keep working on the numbers. And then of course myself and Dara went to come third in the World Championships that year, picked up the bronze medal and qualified the boat then for the next year. So
Excellent.
then that whole next year we're trialling against the rest of the team constantly throughout the year to keep the seats going forward. So yeah, the partnership kind of came about from that.
That's great. And you mentioned we've been through that recently had a broken rib. Your boat was destroyed in a storm as well.
Yeah.
So that's them type of things. You're thinking, luck's not on my side here. And when you need everything to work on the day, one thing's out of place. It's going to be hard to.
Yeah, well, everything was going really well. We won a medal at the World Cup in Varese in Italy in April, And then I came back and I was messing around. I lived with a guy from Fermanagh.
Right.
We were messing around in the kitchen one day, and we were, pushing and shoving. And I went to tickle the back of his knee.
Any reason for that?
Well, he came down. He came down. I was just back from a trip to Paris, and he came down. He gave me a push. Roll your back, are you? And I'm like, yeah, I am. So I pushed him back, and then we started messing. And then I went to tickle the back of his knee, to try and get him to go.
Okay.
And then he just went, "Hi!" I was like, "Oh,
Interesting tactic.
I was like, "That was a bit strong there." And
Over the top.
He was like, "Well, you were trying to tickle my knee," and I was like, "Yeah, no, but you're whatever." I was like, "That was a bit much." So I was like, "This."
Did you know it was broken straight away?
I did, yeah.
Did
to
you?
be honest,
Did
I've
you
had
go
a
and
broken
get
rib before.
to the hospital to?
So I've had a broken rib before. So I essentially rang that you can't, unfortunately, you can't prescribe yourself a scan.
No.
So I can't book myself into a scan. It's very frowned upon.
No.
So I had to go and get another doctor to do it. So we have a team doc. So I rang him up and I was like, "Look, I have a broken rib. I need a scan." And he's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I have a broken rib. I need a scan." So we got an X-ray, and it was hitting touch and go on the X-ray. It was very difficult to see. So we're like, "Look, we need an MRI." So I went back training then on the bike, struggling with the breathing, struggling with everything, really struggling to sleep.
It's the same rib you broke previously.
No, different one.
Different
yeah,
rib.
no. Unfortunately,
Okay.
with rowing, you end up getting a lot of stress fractures because the calorie intake
Yes.
has to be so high. So you resorb your calcium from your
Okay.
bones whenever your calories per kilogram goes below a certain level. It's about 25. So I went then, got the MRI, was training, and kind of was on a few painkillers and stuff, and was training away. And I was like, "Oh, I feel not too bad. I'll go back in the row machine." So I was back in the row machine doing intensity sessions and everything, and I was a wee bit sore, but it wasn't too bad because the painkillers were in. And then I got the MRI results. Yeah, traumatic fracture, rib 6, right hand side. Now this is 70 days out from the
How
Olympics.
long did it take for that? Was it still fully sort of healed at that stage, or was it still not quite?
No, this
Where it
was
should
this
be?
was about 7 days after it happened. So
Yeah.
it takes about 6 weeks,
Takes a while.
roughly 4 to 6 weeks for a bone to heal. So after about 7 days, I got that, and I turned around again. I was like, "Do you remember I said I forgive you? I don't forgive you." I was like, and then 3 or 4 days later, I went back to him. I was like, "I've come to terms with it. I forgive you again."
Okay.
So it was a rough time.
Time's
those
a healer.
3 weeks, yeah.
Time's
so
a healer.
Spent 6 weeks on the bike, just on the bike,
Okay.
just on the static bike, just turning the legs for 6 weeks, doing about. I think I
Miles.
calculated it over 3 weeks. I had done over. Oh God, it was about at least 700 kilometers a week on the bike, at least. I
Well
was
above
doing
normal then.
I was doing 100 to 140 kilometers per day, pretty
Right.
much. Except some intensity days would have been doing about 80 or 90.
Was the bike the best thing for that? There's nothing else you
Well,
could
you
have
see,
done?
you're just using your lower half, so you can stabilize. You
Yeah.
can put a squat rack and stabilize the upper body. And then we finally got over that. So we missed one of the World Cups in Switzerland, and then we went to a World Cup in Poland 3 weeks later because it was going to be nip or tuck by a few days whether the rib would have been healed for Switzerland. So we pushed on to Poland. We went and then we won it. We won the World Cup in Poland, and that was the first ever gold medal for a heavyweight in a World Cup in Ireland ever. So we were
First ever?
First ever, yeah. Lightweights had won one.
But never
a heavyweight.
Never
So
heavyweight.
some had won medals and silver and stuff, but never gold. So we were delighted then with that. Now it wasn't the full field that would be at the Olympics because it was a bit close, but we were still
big
racing
history.
against the French Olympic
Yeah.
champions, the Kiwis who were sixth on our race, the Germans came second who were European bronze medalists. So it was a good field of teams to race against. And then we took that confidence going forward, and then our last preparation for the Olympics was actually really good. It was going perfect. We're hitting PBs on the times, we were hitting PBs on racing, we were topping we do everything as a percentage of a world record
percentage,
time.
yeah.
So that means you can compare yourself to all the other categories of boats as their percentage of
Yeah,
world's
gives
best
you
time.
stats of
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we were coming out first or second, very consistent, very consistent, very consistent. And then there was one morning at 5 a.m. when the whole hotel shook. Now the whole hotel, and I woke up and I looked over that we always share rooms, which is a lovely thing to do. I
Right.
don't recommend it. But Nathan, the guy beside me from Fermanagh as well, he was like, "What was that?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I think a truck has driven into the hotel, or like something has driven into the front
it
of
was
the hotel."
it was that big of an impact.
The hotel is 6 stories high, and the whole building shook. We were on the
It
fourth
would take a
floor.
lot for it to
Yeah. So we were wondering. And all you could hear was alarms going in the hotel, and you could hear the storm outside. We opened the window, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, look at that!" Like
the trees of
sheet rain, just shit, and coming wind just shooting around the side of the hotel. And it's this big gorgeous hotel in Italy, and it's because we spent 4 weeks in camp before we go. So this big gorgeous hotel. It's from the 1920s. It was a Nazi military
Okay.
command center during World War
Quite
Two.
an old hotel.
It's a part of this historic
Yeah,
palace
yeah.
conglomerate within Italy.
Yeah.
And we looked outside and there was a tree like down through the car park essentially, into the staff car park. Luckily the staff was only like one night manager in, so it wasn't too many. So I was like, what the hell's going on? And then the group WhatsApps were just popping off. My windows are smashed, my windows are shattered, our room, there's water leaking into our room, blah blah blah. So I was like, our room's not too bad. We'll go back to
Did
sleep.
you just stay? Just stay
Yeah,
the
we
night?
just stayed. So we woke up the next morning. I'll show you photos at the
Yeah.
end of this. But we woke up the next morning and we looked outside and there's these big huge trees, like huge big pine trees all around the hotel. And one of them, I'd say, was about 120, 130 meters high. Had just the storm had blown it over. It had taken up its roots and it had just smashed into the front of the hotel.
Okay.
And that was what the sound was. So I was ringing the coach, being like, "You need to get down there and check them boats because our boats are tied onto racks."
How many
but
was it?
they're
All
outside.
just your boat, or every boat was just?
So he went down and he rang me and I was like, well, and he's like, you're single, so my personal private single, which I
Okay.
bring to training, and our team, the Team Ireland double,
Yeah. Both gone.
both smashed in two,
Okay.
split in two.
How long?
Every other boat was fine. Every other boat was fine.
Just
The
Just
two
your
boats
boat.
linked to me and the double that we were going to race in the Olympics split.
when that, like, how long would it then take them to replace them boats?
So our coach, we were in Italy luckily, and our boats are Filippi boats, so they're made in Italy. So the factory was about 5 hours away. So there was a trailer and a van
Away
left
went.
at 8 o'clock straight away, almost down the road. Picked up it was used before, but it was pretty much brand new, the exact same mold, so same shape or frame, and they brought it straight back. It arrived at 10 p.m. that night, and then the coach then was like trying to redo all the measurements to make sure it was exactly the same as the other one. And then we called it Dudley, so we nicknamed the boat Dudley
That's
because
right.
we're like, oh, it's a dud, so it's
Yep.
called Dudley.
Yep.
But then we went and we did race pieces the next week, and we PB'd again.
Okay.
So we were like, that just settled our minds,
Yeah.
and we were like, look, it doesn't matter what boat it is, we'll just perform as it is.
That's how you knew.
And that was 2 weeks out from the Olympics.
Brilliant.
So there was a little moment of panic, and then we just got on with it.
Excellent.
So bit of a turbulent time.
But at the
before-
end of it, it was something positive came from it. 'Cause
Well, yeah, but sure, look, you could always look back and say, God, if I hadn't broke my rib, or if we had the same boat, would we have come gold or silver?
Don't know.
So the guy who broke my rib is taking credit. He's like, oh, I toughened you up to win your Olympic medal.
He
And I was
played
like,
a part.
no, you took away the silver or the gold. So we're very, very close. We're very good friends. So we do take the neck out of each other a little bit.
That's a great story, and one that you can share for years on.
Yeah, no, it's how to
That's
get
great.
through. It'll be good for corporate talks now. How to get through.
You'll
How to get through.
not be stuck
yeah,
for a story.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.